Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jed Lee. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and wicked happy that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, Audible, Castbox, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, wherever you find your favorite shows. Two really wonderful guests for you today, celebrating books about El Dia de los Muertos, great Mexican Latin American tradition. First up, Mariana Rios Ramirez. She is celebrating Abuelita's Gift, a Dia de los Muertos story. And later in the show, Jolene Gutierrez returns to the podcast to celebrate the Ofrenda That We Built. Hey, my friends, we are really excited. Reading with Your Kids podcast is returning to the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, November 9th and 10th at the Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois. Let your imagination come to life at the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, the ultimate family play experience. Dive into hands-on fun with the hottest new toys and games, meet the inventors behind your favorite products, and even get a sneak peek at what will top holiday wish list this year. From interactive play zones to exciting competitions and exclusive giveaways, there's something for every member of the family at the Chicago Toy and Game Fair. And don't miss the Young Inventor Challenge, where kids showcase their creativity and innovation. Who knows? You just might meet the next big inventor. Join us at the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois, November 9th and 10th. Whether you're a game enthusiast or just looking for a fun weekend with the family, the Chicago Toy and Game Fair has it all. And like I said, the Reading with Your Kids podcast will be there, and you may have a chance to be heard on the show. Get your tickets today and bring the magic of play to life. Visit shytag.com for details, and be sure to use the discount code READ, R-E-A-D, at checkout to save on tickets. Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. Join us right now from the beautiful state of South Carolina. Our guest is here today to celebrate her brand new picture book. It's called Abuelita's Gift, a Dia de los Muertos story. Please welcome to the show, Mariana Rios Ramirez. Hey, Mariana, how are you?
Hi, I'm really happy. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk about Abuelita's Gift. I'm so happy for the opportunity.
Oh, you're most welcome. I am, through the magic of technology, I can see into South Carolina, and Mariana is wearing this beautiful embroidered shirt with just beautiful blue and purple flowers, and it's a traditional Mexican shirt. Am I right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So I thought it was going to be appropriate to discuss this book about a Mexican tradition.
Well, it is certainly appropriate and really lovely. Tell us about Abuelita's Gift, please.
Yeah, well, Abuelita's Gift is a story that is mainly about a little girl called Julieta and her abuelita and their relationship and how close they are. And Julieta is getting ready to celebrate Dia de Muertos with her family. And it's actually the first Dia de Muertos since Abuelita passed away. So she's trying to find a way to honor Abuelita at the ofrenda. And she's going to try different things that don't work out. And she will finally discover what is it that she had to offer from the heart. So it's something that only she can offer. And that's a way that she's going to be feeling connected to Abuelita, even if Abuelita is not longer around her.
I'm learning more and more about the Dia de los Muertos. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and when it's celebrated and what the tradition is all about?
Yeah, well, this is a pre-Hispanic tradition. It's actually very ancient, before the Spaniards conquered Mexico. So the tradition has evolved and it is celebrated on November 1st and 2nd. And the main goal is to honor the life of ancestors. But what is unique about this celebration is that it's not a time to be sad, but it's a joyful holiday in which families get to share stories about their ancestors. And so it's a way of keeping them alive through their stories, through their memories, and in their hearts. So I love that about it, that it's celebrated with music and food and colorful decorations. So I like that about this tradition. Mm-hmm. And actually, I wanted to write this book because when I came to live to the US in 2016, because of my husband's job, my kids were really little. My son was 5, my daughter was 2. So when we came here, they were exposed to a different language and different culture and traditions. So for my husband and I, it was important that they adapted and embraced those traditions, but also to keep a connection to their Mexican roots and their family. And Dia de Muertos was the perfect opportunity to do that. We set up an ofrenda every year. We share stories about our grandparents and the great-grandparents that we got to meet. So it's a way that my kids stay in touch with their family. And it's something that we also enjoy doing together. So it's been wonderful to celebrate that as a family.
Really cool. I love the idea of keeping our loved ones alive in our hearts.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. I know we don't celebrate Dia de los Muertos in our family, but we do celebrate our relatives. And my kids could probably tell you a lot of stories about my grandmother who they never met. Well, my son met her. He was a baby when she passed, but my daughter never met her. And they can both tell you stories all about her. And my daughter can tell you stories about her grandfather, my dad, who passed before she was born. And I think that's so very important.
Yeah, because it's a way in which your ancestors stay alive, and the way that future generations will get to know about them. So I am looking forward to my kids keeping up celebrating this tradition with their families when they grow up, as a way of, as I said, mainly staying in touch with family and also with their Mexican roots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Obviously, this would be a great book for a kid from a Mexican family to kind of see themselves portrayed positively in the pages of a book. But I also think it's great for kids of Irish descent or Scottish descent or Middle Eastern descent, for everybody to take a look and get to know a little bit more about Mexican culture and, the culture that some of their classmates might celebrate.
Yeah, I absolutely love that this book gets to be like a mirror and a window for those kids. And also, a girl just asked me in a school visit that I had last Friday if she could celebrate Dia de Muertos or if only Mexicans could. And I was happy to be able to tell her that everybody can celebrate their ancestors. Everybody can share their stories. And that's the point. If kids that read this story get curious about their families and ancestors and ask questions and ask for those stories, that would make me so happy.
Yeah. I think knowing about our ancestors, knowing where we came from, knowing the struggles that our ancestors went through to create the world that we are living in right now, I think is really valuable. And I think it's pretty valuable for adults to, think about that. Think about some of the struggles. Think about the hardships that their grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-parents had to go through. I think it can help us better appreciate the gifts that we are blessed with.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So what was it like bringing your family to a new country? I'm always interested in the immigration story from families and how difficult and how what things were really difficult and who helped make the transition easier.
Okay, well, I had the advantage that my husband and I spoke English like before. Mm-hmm. So thankfully I was able to communicate, and that was a little thing to be less worried about. But as I said, my kids were really little. My son was 5, and I think that he was the one that struggled the most. My daughter was just 2, so she was learning to speak Spanish while my son was already reading and writing in Spanish. So when we came here, he would start kindergarten. And I remember the day that we just left him in the school. And for several months, he had a hard time, not just because he couldn't understand and communicate, but also because he was missing our family in Mexico, the food, his friends. So he remembered his school. So I think that's what made it more difficult for him. But thankfully, at the time, he had an ESOL teacher that was helping him a lot. Also, his classmates were really kind and welcoming, and his teachers were very patient and understanding. So in school, I'd say that he had that support system. Mm-hmm. And here at home, well, I was able to be really near them. I was not working, so I was focusing on getting them adapted. So I started, actually, this is connected to why I became a writer, because picture books at the time were tools for me to help my kids read well and connect, and to hear the English. So I started reading a lot of picture books with them, and that's how I fell in love with the genre. And I actually ended up writing my first book, which is Santiago's Dinosaurios. And this book is the story of my son. Well, it's based on that. It's about this immigrant boy that came to the U.S. and didn't speak English, and how that went for him. So for my son, I think I remember it was after Christmas that he started to be able to communicate, like something clicked, and he suddenly started to find it easier to communicate. And thankfully, after that, he was able to navigate it. He's a successful student. He right now is in 8th grade. He's bilingual. He can read Spanish and English, so and speak it too. So it was hard at the beginning, but with hard work and the support system, he was able to flourish and to adapt. So I am very grateful for that. Wow. And also because he was very brave. And yeah, because I assume that for any kid, that's really hard. That's why I also wanted to write that story, because I know that in the world, there are many kids that are going through this, not just between Mexico and US, but as you mentioned, in Ireland, in China, so it's hard for children not just to adapt to the new language, but as I said, the new food, the new traditions, and the ways of living. So they're really little heroes.
But, I'm really happy you said that, because there are lots of people, I'll just say both my son and my daughter, they're adults right now. They've grew up in a bicultural family. My beautiful wife is originally from Puerto Rico. my son's language initially was, he spoke Spanglish. And because we lived right next to his, Puerto Rican, grandparents. And so he would just mix, half the sentence would be in English, half the sentence would be in Spanish. My daughter wasn't living there when she was born, but they both studied Spanish in school, but they're both very timid when it comes to speaking the language. They understand it. But typically when they're having a conversation with one of their cousins in Puerto Rico, they'll speak to the cousins in English and the cousins will speak back in Spanish. And it's a great, they have great conversations, but they don't feel comfortable to make themselves vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And I think, kids like your son, we hosted an international student from China who came to live with us when she was 15. And, I think of the courage that she had to go to the other side of the world with a not as strong, grip of English, was incredibly brave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It has to be scary at the beginning, but I mean, kids are really resilient. And if you give them the right tools, they can really pull through. So, yeah. And of course, that also depends that they are in an environment that is supportive and pushes them for that. I mean, in the classroom. So it's very important that they feel like welcomed too.
Yeah. Now, me, on the other hand, I'm not fluent in Spanish, but I don't care. I go down, whether it's El Salvador, or Puerto Rico, or Guatemala, or Panama, I just start speaking with my 300, 400 word Spanish vocabulary. And, I love it when people laugh at me because that's kind of my job, is to make people laugh. And, so it's a lot of fun, but I know I'm also almost 100 years old. So I have a very different perspective than, somebody who's, much younger. I'm interested, I'm curious, when you're writing Abuelita's Gift, are you writing the initial drafts in English or in Spanish?
No, I was writing in English.
Uh-huh.
So my first draft was in English, and what the book was acquired, the idea was that it would be just in English. And actually the Spanish edition idea came like afterwards, not like when the book was bought. Mm-hmm. And my editor reached out to me asking if I would like to translate it. Mm-hmm. So I was really happy because this is a book about a Mexican tradition. So having it in Spanish has been really a dream come true, and being able to translate it myself, I'm very grateful for that. Although, let me tell you, it was not as easy, even though I speak Spanish and English. When you are writing, you want every word to be perfect. So when I was writing in English, I spent a lot of time finding like the right word. So when you translate to Spanish, sometimes the words are not just the same, or they don't cross over the same. Mm-hmm. So you need to and also you need to find words that kids can understand, like also in Spanish. So, it took a while, and I understood that what was important was keeping the essence of the idea and the feeling. Mm-hmm. So that was very important because the book has a lot of heart. Mm-hmm. So I needed to be able to also put that in the Spanish edition. So it was interesting, and I really enjoyed doing that. But yeah, it started in English, and the Spanish came like later.
That's very cool. I notice when I'm touring a Spanish speaking country and I'm by myself, I try to think in Spanish when we're driving down the street, and I find that my perspective changes. It's a subtle change. It's hard for me to describe, but when I'm consciously thinking in another language, there's something different happening in my brain, and it's not just struggling to find the words. Do you find that yourself? Do you find yourself, thinking differently when you're speaking English or Spanish, or does your perspective on things change?
Mm, I remember when I was learning English, I used to think in Spanish and like translate it. But now I am able to go, well, like that process has changed. So I'm able to think it in English. I guess that I am more used to the language now. But yes, there are certain words that don't, they just don't exist in English or in Spanish. So, you need to find like the closest word to what you want to say. But yeah, I mean, being able to speak more than one language, I think, as you said, that it makes not just your brain work different, but I also think that it opens like the view that you have of the world and certain things.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. I have a question. When I was touring El Salvador, it was right around October 31st and November 1st and 2nd, and then the rest of November. Everywhere I went, they had, all the bakeries had signs up for Pan de Muerto. That part of the Dia de los Muertos tradition?
Yes, Pan de Muerto is very traditional, and actually it has a meaning. It represents the cycle of death and life. So it's very common. I mean, we are already in September. Well, we are in September, so Dia de Muertos is still some days in the future, but I am sure that right now in Mexico, there are bakeries already selling Pan de Muerto. Even Starbucks in Mexico sells Pan de Muerto. So it is like very traditional. People really like it. And sometimes they even have different flavors. So it's really a thing. And in the ofrendas and during Dia de Muertos, it's very common that families, eat that. So yeah, I would say that it's like one of the main elements of the celebration. And it's really good too. I love it.
I agree. I had some and it was really good. Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Abuelita's gift, a Dia de los Muertos story, and find out more about you.
Well, I have my website, which is www.marianariosramirez.com. There they'll be able to find more information about the book and also links to where they can buy it, or they can go to Penguin Random House website, search for Abuelita's Gift or El Regalo de Abuelita, which is the Spanish edition, and they will also be able to find there the links to the different bookstores.
Yeah. And any work in progress right now that you can give us a sneak preview of?
Well, it hasn't been announced yet, but I am working with my editor on a new picture book. And well, all I can say is it's also related to Mexico, which is very exciting. So hopefully it will be able to, I'll be able to talk about it soon after it gets announced.
Wonderful. Well, you have an open invitation to come back when that book is out in public, to come back on and celebrate.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Abuelita's Gift, a Dia de los Muertos story. Our guest has been Mariana Rios Ramirez. Mariana, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time and for this opportunity, Jed. I really enjoyed it.
Hey there, families! Are you looking for an exciting way to bond and learn together? Look no further than our STEM is Family Fun video series. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of STEM through hands-on activities right in your own home. Our series features lessons from experts at renowned institutions like the San Diego Children's Discovery Museum, the National Children's Museum in Washington, D.C., and Children's Museum Houston. From making homemade rainbow bridges to creating an oboe out of a straw, there's something for everyone in the family to enjoy. So grab your lab coats and get ready for an adventure. Go to readingwithyourkids.com and click on the STEM is Family Fun link at the top of the page and let the learning and laughter begin. STEM is family fun, where learning and bonding go hand in hand. Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. We are so excited. Our guest is returning to the show to celebrate her brand new book. It's called The Ofrenda That We Built. Please welcome to the show, Jolene Gutierrez. Hola, Jolene. How are you?
I am so good. Thank you so much for the warm welcome, Jed. How are you doing?
I'm great. I had such a great time speaking with you in the past. I remember that you were a school librarian, and we had a wonderful conversation about the power and the importance of school libraries in addition to your wonderful book.
Yeah, absolutely. School libraries change lives, save lives every day. I'm so grateful to be in that occupation, but also writing for kids.
Yeah. So let's talk about this book that I understand you co-wrote with your daughter.
That's correct. So during the pandemic, I was teaching from home. She was learning from home. She was a college student at the time. And my father had passed away just a few months prior to the pandemic happening. And he passed on November 1st, which is the beginning of Dia de los Muertos celebration. And we have an ofrenda that we've put up in the past for other family members, but my father's passing really brought that idea home and central to me. And then, of course, with everything going on in the world with the pandemic, we were kind of surrounded by this concept of death. And for me, I really love Dia de los Muertos and the beauty and the celebration in that holiday. The beauty of connecting with ancestors, not just mourning, but really celebrating their lives and remembering and laughing, playing music, eating favorite foods. So that kind of was on my mind. And when my kids were young, my husband's from Mexico. And so we wanted to raise them, learning more about their heritage and hearing the Spanish language. And I really searched for books celebrating their heritage and struggled to find many. There were definitely books out there, but they weren't easy to find. And so with my daughter being a young adult and with this concept of ofrendas and Day of the Dead on my mind, I thought maybe we could create something together. And the story, the cumulative story, the house that Jack built, was really kind of what was on my mind. The layers of creating an ofrenda, an altar, where you have, maybe an embroidered tablecloth that's a family heirloom that you've passed down, and you're adding things like favorite foods, or pan de muerto, which is bread of the dead, or papel picado, which is the cutout papers, or sugar skulls, or different layers to this ofrenda. And so my daughter Cheyenne and I started working together and creating this text. And it was just such a beautiful thing to create something that helped us remember and mourn, but also celebrate and heal. And we were lucky enough that it actually sold, the manuscript actually sold too, because part of it, we were just creating and trying to do something together and something productive. And such an honor. And the illustrator, Gabby Zapata, is so gifted. Her illustrations are just luminous, so beautiful, and add to our text in such an amazing way. It's published by Chronicle Kids Books, and will be out August of this year.
Very exciting. How was it creating with your daughter? That must have been a special experience.
It was such a special experience, and I'm trying not to get emotional because it's an experience we may never have in exactly the same way again, being in the same house, just she would come into my room and, lay on my bed, and we'd kind of brainstorm lines or ideas. And then I would go to her room and, we'd just kind of trade back and forth. The text is a rhyming text, which is so challenging for me. I don't view myself as someone who writes in rhyme, although I do have a couple of rhyming books, because it's such a difficult thing. And I still don't feel strong enough in it to consider myself a person who writes in rhyme. But my daughter has a very musical ear. She played viola for years, and she was so good at being able to pick out the rhythm and the beat. And, there were times when I kind of would get deaf to it almost, if, because I would just hear it again and again, and I'd say, I don't know what we should be doing here, where the beat should be. And she could always pick that out. So her strengths really added to this whole manuscript. And it was such a beautiful thing to be able to create something with her in that way.
Yeah. Especially because you were mourning and because you needed to heal, to do it together. I don't think enough families have that opportunity. We all kind of heal in our own time, in our own way. And surrounding the death of a loved one can be so difficult, compounded by the fact that we're going through this worldwide pandemic. And for at least part of the time, we thought, are we next? Having to share that experience is so special, and I'm so happy that you're able to do it.
Thank you. And I am too. I am so grateful. It was just such a gift to have that time together. And like you said, to be able to process and heal together, because so many times we don't do that. You attend a funeral, or you do things and then life goes on, but that's not how grief works. It hits you at different times and it keeps coming back, and you do need to revisit and talk about things and heal. And that's, I think, part of what I really love about the whole holiday of Dia de los Muertos is these memories are intentionally brought up. In my family, when I was growing up, death happened, we went to a funeral, and we were done. And that was just kind of how it was treated. And that wasn't how my heart needed to mourn. And I remember crying at different times and, asking my mom if I could see a therapist, and her saying, no, what do you, are you joking? And I had to kind of muddle my way through grief on my own. And in this tradition, for holidays like Dia de los Muertos, where you are intentionally thinking about these ancestors, and you're, bringing out the photos, and you're making their favorite food and playing their favorite music, and you're telling stories. It's such a beautiful way to come together as a community and show, like, we are all hurting because this person is gone, but we all still remember the good times, and we're laughing together, and we're together as community. And that's so powerful.
Yeah, it is true. When I was growing up, almost 100 years ago, it was almost as if we didn't even acknowledge death. It was like, especially if you were younger, there was kids didn't go to funerals or wakes, or it was just, what happened to Grandpa? He's gone. Move along here. So I'm really happy that that's changing. I'm also really happy that another tradition that happened when I was a kid is you'd have a 3-day wake. That was so painful. So I'm really happy we're kind of getting away from that. But the tradition of the Dia de los Muertos, it's related to the Catholic All Saints Day, All Souls Day, and I think it's a great way to kind of talk about our loved ones, talk about our feelings, and to be there to support each other.
Absolutely. And yes, it is tied to that All Saints and All Souls Day, but it also is tied to other indigenous traditions. So, yeah, when I'm going to use the word colonizers, and I hope that's not offensive, but when colonizers came to Mexico, that was one of the ways to kind of help get people on board with becoming Catholics is, you know, like, we are going to celebrate this holiday and we're going to tie it to these dates. And so we're all sort of on the same page, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was your daughter? I mean, obviously that you enjoyed that, but is your daughter looking to write kids' books, or was it just a fun kind of a thing to do with mom?
That's a great question. So she hasn't expressed an interest in writing more, but she is such a creative person. She is extremely artistic. She did not put her art out there for consideration for illustrations for this manuscript, and she's never done anything to that scale, so that may not have been even fitting. But I do feel like she has that ability if she wanted to pursue writing and illustration. She has those gifts and those talents. Right now, so she graduated from college 2 years ago, and she's been teaching and then now working in marketing at an international school. She's in China this year. So she's just kind of exploring career options and figuring things out. But I could absolutely see her writing, and like I said, potentially illustrating in the future.
Yeah. So neat. Your daughter is working at an international school. My daughter attended an international school here in Boston, and the majority of the kids, the international kids, attending that school were from China, and we hosted a number of them. So I have 5 or 6 Chinese daughters.
I love that.
Which is a pretty cool thing.
Yes. Yeah. And Cheyenne, the bonds that she's formed, she's in Hangzhou, China this year. Last year, she was in Hong Kong. She has just made lifelong friends, and she's such a foodie. So she has been enjoying eating all different kinds of cuisines and just traveling a little in that general area and exploring. So she's really having the time of her life there.
That's cool. You know, one of we took one of our Chinese daughters out for dinner when she first arrived, and we went to a very well known, I won't mention the name of the restaurant, but it's an Asian fusion restaurant that's very popular all over the country and in other countries, and it was a restaurant that we enjoyed going to, so we invited her out with us. And the first thing she said when the food came out is she looked at me and she said, "You know, this isn't Chinese food." I'm like, "Yeah, I figured that."
That's funny. That's kind of like Mexican food here, right? You know, like my husband's like, this is not this is not authentic.
Yeah. It's interesting. I love books that celebrate cultures and especially celebrate multicultural, bicultural families, multicultural families, just to, for a number of reasons. It's great that kids, again, going back to the windows, mirrors, and doors, kids are able to see themselves and their culture portrayed on the pages of a book. But also, I really think it's important for others to be able to take a look through that window and see a different culture and see and acknowledge that it is different and it's a different way to do things, but also see that, well, it ain't that different. They're still human beings over there.
Yes. I love that you say that. I mean, that is, for me, I grew up in a small farming community, very white, very sheltered, and books were definitely my window to the world of understanding, different religions, different cultures, different cuisines, different stories, different histories. All of those things are things that have always been fascinating to me. And books helped me to learn those things when I was in a very insulated place and wasn't seeing or experiencing that. And at the school that I teach at, we're a pretty white school. So it's very important to me in our library on our shelves to have all voices, all stories that I can find represented so that those kids can experience and learn and grow. And the lessons that I teach really focus on different biographies, social justice kinds of things, so that these kids are hearing some of these stories and experiencing and learning and hopefully growing as well.
Yeah, yeah. I'm imagining the Ofrenda That We Built would be a good way to talk to our kids about a bunch of different things. Of course, it would be a wonderful way to talk to our kids if we are experiencing grief or if somebody in our family has passed. Most kids, and I think in most families, if not all, there's somebody that a kid will hear about that they never met.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and maybe this is a way to kind of open up that conversation. And so what was grandpa like? What was your great grandmother like? And, you know, and I think I know for my kids, my son met my dad, but my dad passed when he was 6 months old. So he doesn't really know him. And my daughter never met her grandfather or my grandmother, who was so important in my life, but they've heard stories about them, and they could probably tell you a lot about them, even not having met them.
Yeah, and that's so beautiful. I mean, that's another example of, you know, how people live on through us, through our stories, through keeping those memories alive. And it's such a gift because then kids have this understanding, oh, this is where I come from. These are the people I come from. These are my stories. This is my heritage. This is my history. Such a gift. So beautiful. I love that you've shared those stories with them.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll share this with you too. Kind of silly. I'm not sure if I shared it on the podcast. My grandmother, who was one of my best buddies growing up, we would go to the pro wrestling matches in Boston, and she'd ride in the back of my motorcycle, and just the best. And so when we were expecting our first child, she said, "What are you going to name it?" And I said, "Well, if it's a boy, we're going to name him Christopher, and if it's a girl, we're going to name her Alejandra." And my grandmother said, "Huh?" I said, "Alejandra." She said, what? Alejandra. And my grandmother finally said, I'm going to call her Sally. I said, okay, fine, whatever. Well, my son came first, and so she got to know my son, but she passed before my daughter came. One night, we were in her room, and I think my daughter is 4 years old maybe, and she had all her dolls along the room, and we went in, and I said, "Hey, what's this doll's name?" And she said, "Sally." I said, "Okay, what about that doll?" "That's Sally." And every doll, she had never heard that story, but every doll she had named Sally. And I'm like, this is kind of cool and kind of weird and creepy.
I love that. I love ghost stories and things like that. And that may or may not be one. I don't know how you feel about ghost stories, but that's I love the connection. At the very least, that's a beautiful connection.
Yeah, I do too. And I grew up loving ghost stories. There was a time in my life where I really liked horror. And I was in the middle of an Anne Rice novel when my son was born. And, when my son came out, I picked up that book again, and I think I got a paragraph in, and I'm like, nope, nope, don't want to go back to this world again, and didn't read or listen to a horror audiobook until a couple years ago. I was doing a cross country drive, and I listened to a 25-hour Stephen King novel. That was cool, but also, yeah, I don't really want to go back all that often.
I think once you have your own kids, the world is almost a horror story. You know, like there are so many scary things. There are things that could go wrong, and it's terrifying for your parent heart, you know? So I understand that entirely.
Well, speaking about your parent heart, in addition to writing the Ofrenda That We Built with your daughter, you have a book coming out in 2025 that you wrote with your son. I love the title.
Yeah, Mamiachi and Me. So that one also was a pandemic story. And thank you for saying you love the title. So the way that happened, Cheyenne and I had already written Ofrenda, and my husband came upstairs to my workspace. He was taking a break from work and was telling me about this NPR piece that he had been listening to about an all-female mariachi group. And I thought he said an all-female mamiachi group. And I said, did you just say mamiachi? And I was, I don't know, like a little offended or a little like, what are you calling these women? And he said, no. And then I was like, huh, that's a great title though. And so then I Googled to see if mamiachi existed as a title anywhere, and it didn't. And then I said to Cheyenne and my son Dakota, okay, I have another story idea. Here's the title. Like, would somebody want to work with me on this one? And Dakota wanted to, and I was really glad because Cheyenne and I had already worked on something. This is a girl power story, and my son is a boy, but he was also very involved in music growing up. And he kind of took a different path than Cheyenne did. Cheyenne found the viola in elementary school and stuck with it all the way through high school. Dakota tried violin. I'm trying to think what he did next. He contemplated band. Then he got into choir, and he loved choir. And then he did musical theater, and he was intending to there's a mariachi group at his high school. He was intending to try out for the mariachi group, and the pandemic happened. And so all of that was tabled. So this felt like a really good way for him to kind of celebrate his love of music, and also a little bit of mourning the fact that he wasn't going to be able to do what he wanted to do his senior year in high school and be part of this mariachi group. So it is not in rhyme, which makes me happy, but it has a lot of really beautiful lyrical writing. So that was, being able to work with each kid and explore their strength and their voices, and, us kind of going back and forth, both of the kids and I, what about this word? No, that doesn't feel right. What about this word? I mean, it was just so beautiful to see them shine in that way and creatively. And then also just the edits on both of those books. We had a lot of edits on Ofrenda, not as many on Mamiachi, because Mamiachi is a different publishing house. But just seeing how we've worked through those edits, hearing Dakota's voice as he gave feedback on certain things it's just such a cool thing to see your kids come into their own and do that.
Yeah. Well, I have to believe that this was a really empowering experience for both of your kids, a real bonding experience for your family. We say here on the podcast that when you're reading a story with your 4, your 5-year-old, and you ask them, what do you think? Mm-hmm. What do you think about this? And you hear them, and you're saying to them, the most important person in your life, the person that kids look up to, cares about what you think, wants to hear you. For you to be able to say that to your young adult kids, and especially a successful author in her own right, to say, yeah, I want to do this with you. I care about you. And then listening to their input and collaborating. I'm just so happy for you, because I'm sure it was such a wonderful experience for them, and has probably given them a lot of confidence in the next phases of their life.
Oh, I hope so. And I hadn't really thought about it in that way. I've thought about it in a selfish way. What a gift this was to me, us having this time together, especially as we were, this close to being empty nesters. And then the pandemic kind of forced us all together for potentially the last time in our lives that we'll all be living together for an extended period of time. It was just such a gift to be able to create something with them. But I love hearing you say that. That is so beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about you and find out more about these books that you and your kids created.
Yeah, my website is www.Jolene Gutierrez. So that's JoleneGutierrez.com. And I have links there with information about my books. You can also find both of these books are available for pre-order already. So you can find them on bookshop.org. You can talk to your local independent bookstore. You can find them elsewhere like Amazon as well. But they're widely available. And I'm just so excited that they're going to be out in the world soon. These are the books that I looked for when the kids were little, and I'm just so honored that they've helped create some of the books that celebrate their heritage.
And, one of the things I think you can do this with any book that you hear about here in the podcast, but I think it would be especially cool if you go down to your public library and you say, I just heard this librarian on Reading with Your Kids, and she's talking about these 2 books that she wrote with your kids, and you should check them out because they should be here in the library.
Thank you so much for saying that, Jed, because that is honestly the best gift. If you request these books at your library, then others get to use and see them. People, as they're browsing, encounter them and they hadn't ever found them or heard of them before. So libraries, having my books in other libraries as a librarian, that is like the best gift, the coolest thing. Yeah.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the co-author of The Ofrenda That We Built. Our guest has been Jolene Gutierrez. Jolene, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Jed.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids. It was really great having you here. So happy to see you here. We hope you will join us again. We also hope that if you love the show, that you would consider leaving a 5-star review on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you may be listening on. We really appreciate it, and it really helps other people find out about the show, and therefore helps us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We also hope that you'll connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. We have a great YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. You can find all of our Drawing With Your Kids and our STEM is Family Fun videos on our YouTube channel. And we'd love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can check out our blog, visit our Certified Great Read Wall of Fame, and use the contact button up at the top of the page to send us a message. Let us know what you love about the show. Let us know what we could be doing better. And let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the show. And another thing that you can do on readingwithyourkids.com, as you go to the landing page, there's a big link there that says, find every episode of the show here. And when you click on that link, it'll take you to the page where you can literally find all of our 2,050 plus episodes. And it's really great because if, for example, you would like to listen to our interview with LeVar Burton or with Candace Cameron Bure or Kate DiCamello, you just put their name into the search tool up at the top of the page and go right to their appearances. We want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, helping us know a little bit more about El Dia de los Muertos. First off, we want to thank Mariana Rios Ramirez. Please be sure to check out Abuelita's Gift, A Dia de los Muertos Story. We also want to thank our friend Jolene Gutierrez. Be sure to listen and check out The Ofrenda That We Built. I want to thank my amazing team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Rayling Tang. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.